earth. Now right here we've got to take some time, and one of the quiz questions next week will be the 6 different meanings of the word evolution. This is how the kids get confused every time. I have learned the hard way, after doing, 46 debates now and over 4,000 radio and TV call-in talk shows. If you want to win a debate on evolution, it's very simple. You first define the word. When somebody says, do you believe in evolution? You have to say, what do you mean? Because there are 6 different meanings to the word. Number 1, we have cosmic evolution, which is more commonly known as the Big Bang. Has anybody ever observed a Big Bang produce anything orderly? If best I remember, Big Bangs produce big messes. Ask the folks in Hiroshima that survived that Big Bang about 60 years ago, right? Ask the folks in Iraq that survived all the Big Bangs we sent over there, several years ago. Cosmic evolution would be the origin of time, space, and matter. Remember we mentioned how God is a Trinity from Genesis 1:1. In the beginning God created the heaven and the earth is a reference to time, space, and matter, right there in Genesis 1:1. The Big Bang is an alternative, substitute way to explain how we got time, space, and matter. The Bible starts off and says, in the beginning, God. Now, if you can believe those first 4 words, the rest of the Bible's easy to believe. God created time, space, and matter. According to the evolution, the Big Bang created time, space, and matter. They attribute the same characteristics that God has to Big Bang, able to produce time, space, and matter. The second definition of the word, after the Big Bang supposedly exploded, the Big Bang, according to the evolutionists, would produce hydrogen and possibly a little bit of helium. The sun is hydrogen and helium. The question then would come, how do we get the other elements? Where do we get lithium and carbon and oxygen and neon and all these 92 elements plus the synthetic ones we have? Where do we get these elements? You'd have to have really billions of years of chemical evolution. Now, the answer the evolutionists often give to this one is, well, stars are so hot, they're able to produce higher elements from just the heat. Okay, well, where did the energy come from then? You're going to have either matter or energy, one or the other. I mean, yes, stars do produce a lot of heat and sometimes produce other elements, some of the higher elements. But all of the reactions we see in nature, we see uranium decay to lead. Potassium decays to argon. They're all downward. We don't see any upward ones without enormous energy input. So the question is, how did we get the higher elements? They don't talk about this hardly at all, but it is a real serious obstacle. You'd have to go through a stage of chemical evolution. Then after that, you'd have to have stellar, which means stars, stellar and planetary evolution. How did the stars form? I mean, you walk outside, you take a look, there's a lot of stars up there. Estimates are every person on Earth could have 2 trillion of them per person. So where did they come from? One atheist was trying to answer this question one time, and he said, well, don't you know, Dr. Hovind, if 20 stars explode near each other, they'll produce enough energy to create a star. I said, well, think about it. You got to lose 20 to gain 1? You sound like a Democrat trying to borrow your way out of debt. If you're losing 20 to gain 1, it looks like a losing proposition to me, doesn't it? First place, nobody's ever seen that happen. It's just theoretical that it could happen if 20 exploded. That's just all theoretical. Nobody's ever observed it. Now, since science deals with what we can observe, we can test, we can demonstrate, this part of evolution is not science. It's part of their religion. It would have to happen, though. It'd have to happen a whole bunch of times. I mean, trillions of times, because there's a lot of stars up there. Number 4, you'd have to have organic evolution. That is basically the origin of life. How did life get started from non-living material? We will cover a whole lot more on that experiments they've tried to do to create life in the laboratory. Back when we get to what's on my video number 4, it'll probably be several years before we get there at the rate we're going in this course. But we cover the origin of life. It's absolutely hasn't happened. Nowhere close. One student, I was in a debate one time at University of West Florida, and this smart aleck student stood up and he said, now, Dr. Hovind, what would you say if a bunch of intelligent scientists someday create life in the laboratory? I said, well, first place, they're absolutely nowhere close to it. They can't even get the amino acids to stick together very good. And that's just a small building block. I said, secondly, I would have to say, if a bunch of intelligent scientists produce life in the laboratory, that would prove it takes intelligence to create life, which is what I've been saying all along. It would actually prove creation, wouldn't it? It certainly wouldn't prove evolution. It wouldn't prove it could happen by itself, by chance, over billions of years. And it hasn't been done. They're absolutely nowhere close. Step number 5, you would have to have macroevolution. This is the origin of major kinds. There are quite a few different kinds of animals. Where did they come from? When you get into a discussion on evolution, I would encourage you to avoid using the word species. The Bible says the animals will bring forth after their kind. Now just stick with what the Bible says and you'll be fine. Because if you get into a discussion on species, somebody's going to prove to you that a dog and a wolf are different species. And well, by our classification system, they are. There's Canis lupus and Canis domesticus, and they're different species. I point out, well, they're interfertile. A dog and a wolf can breed and produce puppies, so there really is no good solid definition of species. I would say there probably also is not a good solid definition of the word kind, but if you put a dog, a wolf, a coyote, and a banana on the table, and bring in a 3-year-old and say, which one is not like the others? He could probably tell you, it's the banana, right? A horse and a zebra are the same kind of animal. It's obviously not like a tomato, right? I'm not sure exactly where the border is between the different kinds. There probably is a little room, and that'd be a good area of study. That's an area worthy of study. But it's pretty obvious when there are different kinds of animals. Most of the cases are clear-cut obvious. Some are a little questionable. Okay, we can study the fringe if you'd like, but let's not waste time focusing on the fringe. Let's look at the bigger picture. The 6th and final definition of evolution is microevolution. That is variations within the kind. Now, this one is scientific. This happens all the time. That's what farmers do for a living, isn't it? They try to produce a particular breed that's good for their particular area. You know, if they happen to live in cold climates, they try to get a cow that can survive the cold climate. Down in Texas, where it's hot, they produce the Brahma bull, you know, which can stand the heat. Then you get the Angus that has real good beef. And so when you're in a right kind of temperature area, you combine the two and get a Brangus, which has both heat resistance and good beef. Farmers spend a fortune trying to develop a variety that's good for their area. Even varieties of cotton for certain kinds of soil. But see, variation within the kind, I actually object to the word microevolution because that's what confuses the kids. But they're using it anyway, so we're kind of stuck with their term, okay? See, when they define the terms, it makes our argument a little tougher. The first 5 are religious. They have never been observed. I did a debate in El Paso, Texas a couple weeks ago, and first thing I did, I gave the 6 different meanings of the word evolution. I said, now folks, number 6 is scientific. I wouldn't argue about that. Bacteria become resistant to drugs after a while. I won't argue about that. It's still a bacteria. Roaches become resistant to pesticides. It's still a roach. And there's a limit to the variation. They probably never will become resistant to a sledgehammer. Okay, there's a limit in there someplace, right? So what's going to happen? Scientists or evolution teachers are going to give thousands of examples of microevolution, which is indeed true. And then they somehow, by association, make the kids believe that all 6 of those go together. And it ought to be illegal to do that. Okay, it's called bait and switch. You get them to offer them one definition of evolution, variation within the kind. Most of the textbooks will say something like, evolution is change in a species over time. And that sounds real innocent, and that's true. Don't you probably look different than your grandpa? Yeah. Does that prove you came from a rock? No. You see what I mean? Certainly doesn't prove the Big Bang or any other thing else up there. That's all fairy tale stuff. And if you will learn those 6 different meanings of the word evolution, and whenever you get into a debate or an argument on the subject, just simply stop and say, what do you mean by evolution? And if they say, well, things change. Oh, yeah, I agree. I believe that. Oh, you believe in evolution? Well, I believe things change. I believe the change is limited. to whatever information is already in the gene code.